Now I'm going to start off this video by talking about the fact that the title I've given it, Collapsing and Expanding, really describes what's happening and doesn't actually describe the functionality that I'm going to show you. Now, this is just another one of those helpful little hints that I'm throwing in here to help you work with C# in the Visual Studio environment. And that's often referred to as Visual C# when you're working in Visual Studio like that. But when you're creating an application, it quite obviously usually involves a lot of code, and the code starts to get pretty lengthy. It starts to get spread around different modules, classes, and so forth. And sometimes especially when you're troubleshooting or when you're looking for certain functionalities to change or adjust, you need to be able to see certain parts of the code and you kind of get lost in all of it. And this idea of collapsing and expanding can be really very useful. Now, Visual Studio makes collapsing and expanding sections of your code very easy. Now, oddly enough, this functionality is really called outlining. But if you ask, I don't know, 10 different developers what that's called, where you can kind of make the code, hide or spread out or whatever, they'll call it collapsing and expanding because that's what you're doing. And in reality, the function's actually officially known as outlining. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about exactly what it does. Now, by default, all code is displayed in the code editor, and that's as it should be. If we put code in, if we entered code, we would like to see it. Also, by default, automatic outlining is enabled. Now, keep in mind, if you don't want all this stuff going on, you can turn this off. I'll show you how to do that later. Now, automatic outlining enables you to collapse or expand sections of code as you would like. And you're going to do this with these little plus or minus graphical buttons that are to the left of the beginning of different code sections. Now, there's also a few shortcuts that you may find very useful when you're working with outlining. And take a look at these, and I'm going to show you an even better shortcut with this on remembering these things. So let's say that you want to collapse all the code in all the areas only to the definition statement at the very top of that code. You can hit the control key, hold down the control key, press M, then press O. And that will collapse all the areas to only the definitions. Now, to expand them all back out, control plus M and then L will take care of that. Now notice, control M and L, now these things will confuse you a little bit. This actually toggles all areas either to expanded or collapsed. And you'll see it'll kind of hide code from you sometimes. The best way to understand this, and also to see a few other little goodies that come with this, let's go take a look at a demo. So let's just jump out into Visual Studio. And this is some code. You'll probably see this a little later on in the course in a demo. But what I want you to see is, notice over here to the left, this little minus button in this box. Notice that if I mouse over that, it's drawing it's putting a colored background. Now on the video, I don't know if you can see that's a light gray. I'm going to show you how to change that in just a moment. But if I left click on that, notice it collapses that code and all I see is the top definition line. Another thing that's interesting, with the code collapsed, all I have to do is mouse over this area to the right and it shows me what is inside that area. Okay, so notice I can actually collapse my entire class definition here and then mouse over this and see everything that's in that class. So I don't have to expand everything to see it. Okay, and if you remember the shortcuts that I talked about, the keyboard shortcuts, if I right click anywhere in the code editor, I can come right down to the bottom and here is outlining. And so notice I can toggle outlining expansion. So if I do this, it will do just that particular section that I'm in. Notice I can toggle all outlining and this will open everybody up, and I can come back out here, toggle all outlining again, and it closed everybody, and then I'll have to go toggle all outlining back on. So there's a lot of things I can do in here that's really, really neat. Now, if I want to change those colors, I want you to notice what I can do. I can go to Tools, Options, and this is just to kind of whet your appetite as to what can be changed. You just have to play around and see exactly what they're calling it. But notice I'm showing settings for the text editor, fonts and colors, and I'm going to come down to a collapsible region. Okay, and notice that's the color now. Well, I'm going to change the background to something you'll really be able to see, like yellow, and I'll change the item foreground to black. All right, so I'll hit OK there. And now, if I mouse over this, notice it's very obvious what's going to be collapsed if I collapse that, okay? And so it shows you exactly. Notice if I come up to the class level, it's going to show me my entire class that's going to be collapsed. This is a great way to see everything that's in a method like you see here in my button one click event. So this is a really neat tool that you can play with. And for example, when you're going through testing code or you're trying to identify where something's happened and this is not involved, just collapse it down so you don't have to look at it. When you've checked this one, collapse it down so you don't have to look at it. If you ever want to be reminded, just mouse over this portion and say, oh, no, do this. That's not what I'm looking for. Do that. That's the one I'm looking for. And then I can just double click right here to expand it while I'm sitting there. So lots of cool little tricks like this in Visual Studio. I doubt you'll see this on the exam, but I just wanted you to see if you're out there working and you're not familiar with this and you haven't really looked at it, these are possible functionalities. If you don't like any of this business, go to outlining and choose stop outlining, and notice all this is gone and your code's just there just like it was. Okay, then you can go back to outlining and then you can start automatic outlining up once again. So real quick look at outlining, which most of us know as collapsing and expanding the code.